Shri Sai Ram. Dear students, hearty welcome to one and all for the 10th class State Syllabus Science Textbook 1 and the chapter Our Environment. The whole chapter, for our better understanding, we have divided it into 4 parts, and today we will be moving to the part 1 of this chapter, and the part 1 mainly deals with ecosystem and its components. The caption of this chapter, Our Environment. Environment, the word reminds me 3 things in the nature. One is the cow, and the next is the river, and the third is the tree. The cow, which is going to give the milk from its udder for others, but not for itself. And the river flows continuously to quench the thirst of others, not for itself. And the tree, which is going to provide fruits for the sake of others and not for itself. All these 3 uphold the value of sacrifice, which we call it in Sanskritam as Paropakarartham. Paropakarartham duhanti gavaha. Gava, cow, gives milk for the sake of others. Paropakarartham phalanti vrikshaha. Vriksha, the tree, which provides fruits for others. Paropakarartham jalanti nadyaha. Nadi, the river, flows for the sake of others. Paropakarartham idam shariram. This body, which is given by God, is meant to serve others. Is the highest value which we can learn from this chapter called environment. The environment is the replica and the reflection of selflessness. In all the Puranas, all the Upanishads, the ultimate value which makes us to put it to practice and reach to the divinity is Tyage Naike Amrutatva Manashuhu. Only through sacrifice we will become immortal. That is the highest value which we can learn from this chapter, Our Environment. Dear students, in order to bring awareness and to know the importance of greenery, which is the life breath of earth, we celebrate every year June 5th as World Environmental Day. Because environment immediately comes to the mind is greenery. Greenery, the life breath of Mother Earth. In Kannada, Hasire Usiru. The chapter mainly brings awareness among us to put to practice the values which we learn from this nature, and also to protect and safeguard the nature for ourselves and for the nature also. If we come back to our chapter about the environment, the part 1, which mainly deals with the ecosystem and its components, we all know that environment is a combination of living and non-living things around us. And the living things are called as biotic components, and the non-living things are called as abiotic components. Together, along with us, form the environment. The biotic and the abiotic components around us together is called environment. And the 2 components of this environment, the biotic components, which is the living organisms in the environment, the plants, the animals, and the microorganisms, the bacteria, the virus, the fungi. The abiotic components, non-living components in the environment, water, soil, wind, and minerals. You can just observe the greenery that is there shown here. Plant for the planet. Our earth is a planet. Plant for the planet to sustain and retain. And the non-living things, what we see, the soil and the minerals through which we are going to get the metals. The bacterial, the pictorial, diagrammatic view of the microorganisms. Coming to the ecosystem. What is this ecosystem? A restricted area in an environment where we can see the interaction and the interdependency of living and non-living things. It is a restricted area where we can see the sharing and caring of living and non-living things together. Above all, the ecosystem is a structural and functional unit of biosphere. Bio, life, sphere, life sphere. We have 4 spheres: hydrosphere, lithosphere, atmosphere, biosphere. The biosphere is living sphere. The atmosphere, non-living. The lithosphere, non-living. Hydrosphere, non-living. Hydrosphere related to water. Lithosphere related to sand, soil, stones, pebbles, hillocks, to tell you all. Atmosphere related to air, the gases. And biosphere, living organisms. The area in an environment where there is interaction and interdependency between biotic and abiotic components. So the area in an environment where there is interaction and interdependency between living, that is biotic, and non-living, that is abiotic components. Not only that, this ecosystem is the structural and also the functional unit of biosphere. Examples for the ecosystem: forest, pond, aquarium, it is a man-made ecosystem. Garden, the man-made ecosystem. There are few examples for ecosystem. You can observe the pictorial view of a mini aquarium and the garden that is being created by human beings, to tell you. Types of ecosystem. On the basis of 3 criteria, we classify the ecosystem. The first is on the basis of its nature. The second is on the basis of the size or duration. Anyone you can tell duration if you think of. And the third is on the basis of the size. Now coming to the first criteria, on the basis of nature, the ecosystem is classified into 2. One is the natural ecosystem, artificial ecosystem. The artificial ecosystem is also called man-made ecosystem. The natural ecosystem further is being classified into terrestrial and aquatic. Terrestrial relating to land ecosystem, we can tell. The grassland, desert and forest are the examples for terrestrial ecosystem. The aquatic, we have freshwater and marine water ecosystem. The freshwater ecosystem further classified into 2. One is lentic ecosystem, lotic ecosystem. Lentic, the water in storage. potential energy water is having there. No movement. Lotic, floating. The water is floating. Kinetic energy is being possessed by the water medium. The lentic ecosystem, pond and lake are examples. The lotic, river and stream are the examples. The marine ecosystem, the coastal area, the coral reefs, the estuaries where the river and the ocean meeting point, which we call it the sweet water and the salt water mixing point, estuaries to tell you all. Estuaries, they are the examples for coastal and also the marine ecosystem. Artificial ecosystem, man-made ecosystem, aquarium, garden, the fields, the farms, the greenhouse effect, and what all the human being is going to make. You know the ecosystem, interaction and interdependency of living and non-living. Then you yourself can think over which is natural and which is man-made for further examples. This is on the basis of the nature the ecosystem is classified. On the basis of duration, temporary ecosystem, permanent ecosystem. The temporary ecosystem, laboratory culture of protozoans, first, zoa, animals, the first existed unicellular organisms, that is the amoeba, the euglena, the paramecium, the trypanosoma. So culturing of those protozoans in the lab, it is a temporary, it is not permanent. The permanent ecosystem, desert, forest, lake, they are all permanent ecosystem. Permanent ecosystem, God-made ecosystem. Temporary ecosystem, man-made ecosystem. Size, on the basis of size, small ecosystem, very small, flower pot. See in the flower pot, we see the pot that is made of soil is abiotic and the soil that is inside that pot is abiotic. The water abiotic, which is non-living, and the plant that is grown, to tell you all. And from that plant, the flower that is bloomed, it is biotic. Biotic, abiotic, together, interacting and interdepending, forms a very simple and also a small ecosystem, a flower pot. Large ecosystem, ocean. Ocean, we see diversity of living organisms and also there are non-living things spreaded in more area throughout the ocean, to tell you all children. It's a large ecosystem. Components of ecosystem. The components of ecosystem are only two, the abiotic and the biotic. Abiotic, which is non-living components, classified into three criteria. One is inorganic substances such as carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, sulfur, phosphorus, water is a compound there, it is also inorganic. Organic compounds, the food that is obtained from the plants during photosynthesis, the carbohydrates, the proteins, the lipids, the nucleic acids, that is the DNA and the RNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, which is the genetic material carrying the characters from parents to the offsprings. The nucleic acids such as DNA and the RNA is a protein synthesizing factory, ribonucleic acid. Climatic factors such as the temperature, the rainfall, the wind, the light, the humidity, they all come under abiotic components in an ecosystem. the biotic or the living components of an ecosystem. Producers which produce what? Food, which is the main source of energy. And this food is produced by the plants, especially green plants, if it is terrestrial medium. In the water medium, blue-green algae, which we call it in other terms as cyanobacteria, nostoc, oscillatoria. They are all the examples for blue-green algae. Phytoplanktons, phyto, plants, planktons floating in the water. So the water media, the producers will be the phytoplanktons, which are free floating. Algae is producer in the water media, aquatic media. Consumers which cannot produce their own food, heterotrophs they are, and they depend on these producers directly or indirectly for food, sometimes for shelter also. Consumers, primary consumers, purely herbivores, which directly feed on plant products. Cattle, deer, goat, rabbit, elephant, terrestrial primary consumers. Snail, tortoise, aquatic primary consumers. Secondary consumers, they are primary carnivores which feed on herbivores. Dog, fox, cat. Here one note I want to tell you all, dog, it may come for secondary consumer also, and sometimes it is also an omnivore we can tell, which feed on veg and non-veg also. Tertiary consumers, larger carnivores which feed on primary carnivores also. Wolf, tiger, lion, which come for terrestrial. Crocodile, shark, they come for aquatic tertiary consumers. Omnivores, which feed on both plant products as well as the animal product also. In common terms, we call omnivores as which eat both vegetarian and non-vegetarian. Crow, bear, dog and human beings can be included either in secondary or tertiary also in the consumers, because they feed both on directly on the veg also they can feed, or they can eat the primary consumers also. Detritivores. What is detritivores? It's a biological term. The organisms which feed on the dead and decayed organic matter or the dead and decayed remains of plant and animal. Why they feed? In order to break down it into smaller fragments. The recycling of nutrients also take place with the help of this one. They are also called as scavengers. They are the scavengers. Earthworm, which eats the soil and produces a very good fertility, increases in the soil when there are more earthworms, because the excreta, the castings, what they leave after consuming the soil, it is called as vermicompost, a natural compost for increasing the fertility of the soil. Vulture and termites, they are mainly the detritivores, the organisms which feed on the dead remains of the plant and animal and break down into fragments. After these fragments, to tell you all for your kind information, is about the detritivores. Before that, if you recollect, decomposers are there. Decomposers play a major role in the whole sort of components of an ecosystem, that too the biotic. They are nothing but the microorganisms, especially the bacteria and fungi. They break down the dead remains of the plant and animal into their respective nutrients and recycle the nutrients in an ecosystem or in an environment. The recycling of the nutrients takes place because of these decomposers. With that recycling of the nutrients, Shariram. So in today's class, we have understood ecosystem and its components. I hope you all will recap in your respective places of today's part 1 of this chapter by completing the homework very honestly with total involvement and commitment. Above all, thirst and love for the subject. Assignment 1. Give example for the following ecosystem: lotic ecosystem, coastal area ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystem, man-made ecosystem. Second question. List out the components of ecosystem and give examples. The third question. What will be the consequence in the absence of decomposers in an ecosystem? Dear students, let us offer our today's content and the learning output at the feet of our most loving Almighty, and have a good day. Praying for the world's peace and happiness. Thanking you one and all. Jai one and all. Jai Sai Ram.